Hi, my name is Chris McBride. I'm with Synetic Solutions. I am a senior technical consultant and wanted to spend some time here really quickly and share some information with you about document management systems. Document management systems are a way to bring your documents not only into the digital world, but put some intelligence around them so that they can be more manageable and effective in your organization. The document management system can take you really into the next generation and bring you some life to your documents so that they're no longer as static as they have been. A document is not just something that a person might read and follow or instruct them, but it also can have some data attached to it that could tell you things about the document, such as the status, who is the owner. And these are things that we refer to as metadata, and we'll be going over that here. In addition, there's the opportunity for security, like we saw before, that people can or can't see these and have different interactions with those. They're searchable if they're on some kind of a portal where a person could, based upon different constraints that they put for the document they're looking for, find them without actually knowing where in the file share they might exist. In addition, they're workflow centric, so documents are part of a life cycle. They're not just static paper anymore. And we're going to talk about some of these life cycles that can happen for a document depending upon the needs of your organization. Now first, talk about metadata. These can be a variety of different things that might give you a need to track your document. So who created the document, but that could be different from who's the owner of the document, which could be an individual or a group. In addition to who might be the person who would dispose of the document or who it would apply to depending upon their role in the organization. When was the document created? In addition, how was this document approved? Did it go through a process or was that necessary? What happens when the document expires? Does it need to go through a disposition process? Is it in a draft mode? How long is it going to be relevant to the organization? And do I have a role with this document? Do I need to edit you or approve you or collaborate with you? Another thing to think about is retrieval, so things that would help an individual search for the document. Is it part of a specific department or departments? Are these associated with specific projects or maybe a specific product? And how would it help me with my job? Is this something that would help me as an individual from like an HR perspective, or is it more with the operational side? Again, these are just some of the ideas that you might think about in terms of metadata that you would use to classify and characterize your documents. Now, a document can be part of a workflow, which gives it a life cycle of sorts. And so what you're looking at here will show you basically everything inside the blue circle would be a pretty standard document management life cycle. A document is created in the orange box there. It might be collaborated upon there informally, or as part of a workflow, it might go through an approval process where further collaboration and actual sign-off occurs so that we know that this document has not just been created but vetted and is now ready for the rest of the organization to consume. Now that was a pretty simple process there. In addition, you can add some other things that are outside of the box, such as, if a change is requested, well, that can restart that cycle, or there could be a point in time where this document's no longer really appropriate for the organization because its time frame has come to an end and it goes through an archive process. These could be made with one workflow or several workflows, again, depending upon the need and complexity of your organization. Now, when you think about workflows, there's two things that you might want to consider in regards to the complexity. One type of a workflow is known as a sequential workflow. In this process, a document is created, it goes through an approval, and it's deployed. That's not the sequential piece. What's sequential is that it happens in that order. It doesn't necessarily have an opportunity to kind of backstep it, and it's a very rigid workflow, but it works, and it's there, and it works for everybody right now. Another way of looking at that would be a state machine workflow, and this is a little more complicated, but it might be necessary depending upon anything in regards to your document, is in terms of an approval process or whether it's appropriate for it's a spec for a product. I'm using the example here of when somebody buys a home. Ideally, you would first qualify for a loan in the blue box, and then you would go and look at houses. Next, you would place an offer, go through a negotiation, a closing process, and then you would move into that home. However, anybody who's ever bought a home knows that when you place an offer, it may be that you need to go back and requalify for a different loan, or if the offer is declined, you might go back and look at more houses. Likewise, in the negotiation, you might decide that you want to go look at more houses. Once you do qualify for a loan, you might jump straight into the negotiation if you've already been looking at houses. And that's some of the beauty of a state machine. It has a lot more flexibility in regards to where you are at in the process. Now, when you're building out one of these workflows, it's understandable that in each one of those boxes, there could be steps inside of the boxes that could be additional state machine steps or sequential steps. So a lot of complexity becomes into play, and as you're looking at what the impact and the resources need, you might think about the sequential workflows as a simpler workflow, and state machine is something that's going to take some more resources and something that's going to ultimately provide more value for you, but it's going to involve a little more thought. So I thank you for your time, and I hope that you are able to visit our site and take a look at some of the more videos we have out there. They're going to show you some of these concepts put into practice, and so you can help whittle down exactly on what it is that we are hoping that you can benefit from, and welcome you to give us a call and let us show you something a little more customized to your organization in the future if that meets your needs. Thanks again.